is me, Devil here, and welcome to another episode of Cursage Gaming. Today, I will be reading a popular creepypasta titled A Haunting Most Mario. Without any further delay, let's dive into A Haunting Most Mario. So the story starts out with the player telling the reader that something strange happened to him or her. One day, the player wanted to play some Mario, but didn't have an NES, so he or she went to a flea market to find one. Once the player made it to the flea market, he or she saw an old man with, Super Mario Bros. And an NES. The strange thing was that the label was missing. The cartridge had all types of words scribbled in it with black permanent expo marker. The player approached the old man in hopes to obtain his Nintendo Entertainment System and Mario cartridge. The old man said that it was owned by a dead child by the name of Jim. Not to be confused with Jim from The Office. The player said, "Whatever, dude," and bought everything for exactly $2.98 and ran home to play some Mario. The player started playing the game and noticed that everything was normal. No blood, no gore, no hyperrealism, no Zobria porn, nothing. Once the player started playing World 1-1 and collected exactly 36 coins. After the player selected the 12 times 3 coins, he or she tried doing the old warp pipe trick. Instead of seeing the usual text that said, "Welcome to the warp zone," it instead said in all caps, "Welcome to the scary hell place!" Exclamation mark. The player thought it was weird and just said whatever and went into the farthest pipe. Upon going into said pipe, the intro screen showed the text, "Death World 6-6-6-6, all caps. Once Death World 6-6-6 started, the graphics seemed a bit off, and screams were being heard. The player described it as super scary. The player wasn't scared, so he or she kept playing. The player then collected exactly 92.8 coins and made it in an area that was impossible to pass. There were spiked speakles everywhere, so he or she had to die. The player kept trying until he or she had 0 lives. The player thought the game was over, but saw that Mario was back. Mario had blood all over his or her face and had angel wings, and a ring floating above his or her head. The level was one of the cloud levels. Then a spooky digital voice came out of the Nintendo Entertainment System that said, "No hope." The player attempted to get a mushroom, but once he or she did, the screen cut to black for 51 seconds. 51, as in the 4th episode of the 5th season of Breaking Bad, titled 51 by Vince Gilligan. The player resetted the Nintendo Entertainment System, and the game returned. This time, the title screen was different. Mario's face was bloodied. The text, Super Mario Bros., was changed to Super Die Mario Bros., die being etched in with a claw. This scared the player so much that he or she resetted the game again. Upon resetting the game, the digital voice returned saying, "You can't run from the funk." According to the player, the screen was hyper-realistic and showed Maria again, only this time he or she had the player's face. The player's family was also there and were skeletons. The player found this horrific due to how realistic this vile, corrupt imagery was depicted. The player started the game and noticed that once the first Goomba walked towards the player character Morei turned towards the screen and started screaming, No mas! No mas! No mas, as in the first episode of the third season of Breaking Bad titled No Mas. It sounded like very high quality CD audio, as well as blast processing, according to the player. The player screamed and shouted out of the gamey. The player put the game away for exactly 1 and 32 days. Later that week, the player noticed that his or her family was acting a bit off. The player decided to do some in-depth research on the Super Mario Bros. Saga. The player found out that Mario was in a secret game that was only released in 2 arcades on the date June 6, 1997. The player, being the absolute Giga Chad that he or she was, realized that that day was Friday the 13th. Scary. The player found this to be quite odd and went back to playing that cursed Mario game. Upon returning, the player selected his or her save file, which resulted in Mario saying, "Why are you no stop playing my game?" The player didn't give a shit, just played anyway. Once he or she went to Peach, he or she noticed that Toad was there with the text, "Peach got folded." Peach is dead. Behind the Mushroom Man was Peach's head on a spike, Mortal Kombat style. Speaking of Mortal Kombat, there's a new video about Mortal Kombat's about to come out very soon, so yeah, be on the lookout for that. Anyways, back to the story. Then a ghost came up with the woman's face. The player assumed this was Princess Peach since he or she was a lady. The player shrugged this off as a glitch and resetted the game one last time. The player went to go load his or her save but saw that his or her name was, in all caps, "Jim died, bro!" Exclamation mark. The player screamed, "Ah." This caused his or her mother to walk in, and he or she screamed as well. The player realized that the whole time the player was dead, and his or her name was Jim. The player then concludes this terrifying story, asking the reader whether or not this whole scenario was real or not. The player's mom then sells the cartridge at a yard sale. The player then tells us to believe the story since it's true. So for the first Mario creepypasta we've done, I gotta say that this was truly immaculate. The way the author describes in detail what was going on really helped me envision what was happening. The images used also added to the scary story. The images really reminded me of Godzilla NES. Now that story is nowhere near the godlike status of this spooky tale. Now some of the writing details really made me enjoy this. The line, for instance, "the screen was hyper-realistic," is a line so good it could be in Breaking Bad. The reason being is that it says that the images on screen weren't the things that were hyper-realistic. It was the screen itself that was hyper-realistic. This line itself shows the multi-digit IQ number the author truly has. He or she should consider writing for Peter Gould and Vince Gilligan. The Shyamalanian plot twist at the end really shook me to my very core. It was a mindfuck of epic proportions. The best part is that if you reread the story, you can see elements that make the plot twist at the end make sense. Similar to the M. Night Shyamalan movie, The Sixth Sense, except that this story is way better than that movie. The author really has the skills to write such an excellent story. One thing I really appreciated was the images being provided. I couldn't really envision what was going on, so the images really helped. It also helps that the images were so real that I had trouble discerning whether or not the realism was fake or not. Speaking of realism, this story was extremely realistic. Aside from the hyper-realistic graphics and imagery, the way the player obtained the game was done in a realistic manner. The old man offering the game for €2 at a flea market. This was so real that it reminded me of a similar scenario I was in. 2 years ago, I was at Zobria's house when I went to her basement to grab more condoms when suddenly I saw an old man in the dank darkness. The old man asked me, "Yo, I got Breaking Bad Season 5 on Blu-ray. You want in? It's only $5. I said, "Say less," and took it and went to go watch some Breaking Bad Season 5 with Zobria. Anyways, back on topic, even though the story is amazing, don't get me wrong, there is only one gripe I have. That gripe being that the player never acknowledged the fact that he or she collected 69 coins. I really wanted to know what was going on in the player's head when he or she collected that exact amount. It really would have added a lot of character development for the protagonist. If you disregard that one flaw, the story is pretty much an 87104 out of 308, and I highly recommend that you give it a read. Links to the story in the description down below. So, this has been the Season 1 finale of Cursage Gaming, and if you like what you saw, make sure you like, comment, subscribe, dislike it if you dislike it. This is me, Skeletal, and I'm out. Oh, and by the way, since this is the Season 1 finale, you'll probably have to wait a couple months for the premiere of Season 2. This is me, Skeletal, and I'm out.